Hey everyone, welcome to Make It Happen. I'm Dr. Brent Siebold, your host. I've got one of my oldest and dearest colleagues in the world of entrepreneurship and innovation at Arizona State University, a former student, but who has now come into his own as a serial entrepreneur out in our local Yes Phoenix community. But it's much bigger than that for a guy like Matt Sherman. He is all over the place, whether it be in California or on the East Coast or internationally. He is looking to learn from the best of the best and communicate those learnings in a very authentic way. He's a writer, he's a publisher, he's a serial entrepreneur, like I said. So Matt and I have stayed in close contact over the past few years since he graduated from ASU, and I've been a big fan of his trajectory post college, and I'm really thrilled to have him back here at Make It Happen to share some of the tips and tricks that he's picked up along the way as he's getting going. And Matt, it's so great to reconnect with you. I'm glad you have a chance to meet all of my friends here at Make It Happen. So anxious to hear what you've got to share with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brent. I'm stoked to be back in the ASU ecosphere. It's good to see you again and chat. And I'm excited to kind of share some of my learnings over the last 5 years, first 5 years into my career. I think the path that I've chosen has been very, in some ways, somewhat categorized as insanely weird and all over the place. I kind of want to, through this session, explain how the career path that I've chosen and how things have been lining up for me have actually allowed me to get an edge, like Brent kind of talked about in the first place, how decisions that I made right after college have set me up beautifully for a pretty exciting ride. And I'll start with where I'm at now, then I'll go all the way back to kind of when I first graduated college, and I'll just tell a story. I'll intertwine lessons in the middle of it. But to start, you're all probably wondering, wait, this guy's not CEO of a giant company, not venture backed, not a VC. Like, who is this person? So the first thing I want to say to give myself a little credibility, because I am all over the place, is 5 years ago or 6 years ago when I was a student, I was reading The Lean Startup, this book, The Lean Startup, which is, some of you may have heard of it, some of you may have not. It's by Eric Ries. It's a book on how to start a startup. The career path that I've been navigating for the past 5 years has landed me in a position to be working for Eric, helping him find companies to invest in. Now, everything it's very hard to describe how someone gets from being a communications grad in Arizona State University who's interested in entrepreneurship to being in the center of Silicon Valley working with Eric Ries. And the point of this the point of this is how I've thought about my career so far, how I've made some decisions, and how I've landed in a very privileged opportunity to be working with one of the best people out there, helping startups get funded, and probably going more down the venture capital route than the startup founder route at this point. But we're not talking about specifically startups, we're talking about career decisions. So the first thing, and there's gonna be 5 notes, like I would have slides, but I was having some technical difficulties. So I'm just gonna break it up. I'll tell you when I'm moving on to the next one. The first lesson that I've learned, and I'm gonna start my story with a lesson and then start with the story, is no risk, no reward. A lot of people go through life taking as little risk as possible, or kind of avoiding risk. And what this does is it keeps a very kind of straight line, very predictable line. Not much variation is included if you're not introducing much risk. But what happens when you take risk is the following. I graduated college in 2016. I was a communications grad at Arizona State University. I took several entrepreneurship classes. I was very involved in entrepreneurship. And I got a job out of college at a event production company. It was, Endless Events. It was a fantastic company. My boss was great. Will Kern, I don't know if you all would hear this, but shout out to you. But, like any angsty, post grad, I wasn't super into the role. Just like pretty much everyone that graduates college. And about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months in, it's hard to remember exactly, I decided, you know what? I'm young. I have very little responsibility. I have no family. I have no, I have no family like that I'm taking care of that is responsible for me. I have no, I'm, in a privileged position to be able to take some risk in my life. So I decided to quit my job and dive head first into starting a company called Publoft. I never took a business class in my life. I took some entrepreneurship classes, but I never took business fundamental classes ever. I'm not a developer. I didn't have anyone in business in my family. So I literally this is one of the biggest risks, I think, in regards to business. Like, this is what they talk about that was saying you should never do. And I wouldn't suggest any of you do it either. But this specifically. But what I did is I quit my job and I started a company called Publoft. Publoft was a content marketing marketplace where we found startups and we matched them up with writers. And the first go at Publoft, we got to $5,000 in monthly recurring revenue. And then it failed. Then I got a job at a local startup. I gave it a few months and I tried again. The second time I tried, and this will go back to no risk, no reward, I promise. But the second time I tried Publoft, we got it to $25,000 in monthly recurring revenue. And we got an investment from Jason Calacanis. Jason Calacanis was one of the first investors in Uber, Robinhood, Calm, and he invested in us. Like, I spent hours with him. But then it still failed for various reasons. But what happened through these through all of this is I set myself up to experience getting an investment with Jason. I set myself up to network with startups as I was working on Publoft. I set myself up to get a real world post grad MBA. Which is different, which is like, you need, I think, both many times to do a good business. But for me, I didn't get an MBA, as this was my MBA. But the only thing that allowed me to do all of those learnings and start down the path that I've been exploring is taking that initial risk. And outwardly, I think that a lot of, even Brent, even my family still, like, I think a lot of people look at my career path and they're like, Matt, like, when are you going to figure it out? And the answer is, I've been figuring out for the last 5 years. But the only way, and this goes into a future point, and I'll tell you kind of where I've landed, which, a little more about that. But the only way I was able to enable myself to break into startups in the first place, or break into anything, was taking a risk initially. So to summarize the first point in regards to your careers, is when you're thinking about what you want to be doing for your life, I would spend a lot of time, or what you're doing for the next 2 years, forget your life, what you want to do for the next year or two. I would spend a lot of time looking at what are your responsibilities and how much risk are you willing to take on, or how much are you able to take on? Because the more risk you're able to take on, the more your potential will fluctuate in an upward trajectory. And if you don't take on any risk, you will have a very predictable life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're wanting something else for yourself, you need to use risk that's a tool that you use in order to get that. So because I was able to take that risk, I was able to meet JCal, able to meet Eric, I pitched roll off both at Sequoia. I pitched everyone. And because of that risk. That's the first, is no risk, no reward. Now take your mental slide and move it the next slide over. Is in the realm of, give me 1 second, is try many things, double down when something's working. So this moment that I'm about to share is when my career truly got started. So I tried Publoft once alone, didn't work out. I tried Publoft a second time with a co-founder, it didn't work out. But around this time, I started a podcast called Forward Thinking Founders. The idea behind Forward Thinking Founders is, what if I interviewed early stage founders before anyone knew who they were and watched their growth over time? And what I did is I started off by interviewing a ton of Y Combinator companies. I interviewed Austin Allred of Lambda School. I interviewed, Laura Behrens-Wu of Shippo. I interviewed Eric Ries. I've interviewed a lot of people. And what happened is that I realized I was really good at it. I was really good at talking to founders. I was really good at making them feel comfortable in a conversation. And I think most importantly, I was really good at finding really interesting and unique founders that come on the podcast. At this point, I've interviewed over 20 companies that has since raised millions of dollars. Like, before anyone have ever invested in them, I found many companies that have raised millions of the best firms, and I've interviewed now over 500 companies. Now, as I spend time working on what I work on, different startups, different companies, I take stock of what I like and what I don't. And I've tried the startup thing. I've tried the job thing. I've tried a consulting thing. I've tried this. I've tried the podcast. I've tried writing. I've tried this. I've tried that. I tried that. And I try a ton of stuff. And I listen to my inner voice, kind of my gut, and we'll go into gut for the last point. But I listen to myself. I'm like, what do I enjoy doing and what am I good at? And I've always come back to this podcast of interviewing founders. I'm very good at that. I don't know how, in Silicon Valley, I have one of the well-known podcasts in the Valley. And it's because I think I'm very good at it. So what I've done as of recent is I've optimized my career to double down on the podcast and the activities that are surrounded with that, which is why I'm slowly shifting from going from maybe I'm not founder material. Maybe I'm not a good founder, and like, that's okay. Like, I may not just be focused, I may not have the discipline to be a founder. But what I've done is as I've gone across my career over the last few years and met the people I've met, I realized I could be a really good venture capitalist. I'm a great spotter of founders. I'm great at connecting with them. I'm great at connecting them with others. So as of the last few years, not even months really, because I just shut down one other thing, about 3 months ago, as this Eric gig kind of came around. But what I kind of realized is I really like the podcast. I really like investing. Maybe I'll start doing more of that. So to kind of bring it back to the first point, I tried tons of stuff. I tried the founder thing. I tried it like 3 times. I tried it 4 times. It hasn't worked out. Doesn't mean the 5th time wouldn't work out. But while I've been trying the founder thing, I've discovered another skill that I'm very good at, and I'm now doubling down on that. So my advice for you in regards to giving yourself a competitive edge, you may not know what you want to do in life. I know I didn't. I mean, now I kind of have a pretty good idea, but I didn't really know when I started Publoft. So what I did is I tried a ton of stuff. I tried it all, and I went back to what I'm the best at. And I'm doubling down on that, which is the podcast. So for you, what are you interested in? The answer is do it all. Do it all as long as you can do it responsibly. And then when you realize you're good at something, when you like something, spend more time on it. Because that's how life works, So that's my second point of learning of my short 5-year career so far, which is, try a lot of stuff, double down on what you like, and specifically, but also what you're good at. You can't just do what you like. You can't just follow your passion, because in life, there's a lot of satisfaction of getting paid well, not like a ton, but like getting paid well for doing what you're great at. And you don't want to be doing what you're great at, but not getting paid anything. You want to make a living. So you got to find that intersection. The third kind of point, I would say, the third point, slide, is building a trust circle. This is something I only actually realized, meaning you need to build a trust circle. This is something I only realized very recently. Actually, Eric Ries helped me realize this. And the idea is that, and this might be actually obvious to a lot of you, I'll be candid, but maybe not. In the world, there's you have access to people, but then you have trust with people. And it took me so long to realize, just because you have someone's email doesn't mean you have their trust. Doesn't mean they'll vouch for you. Just because you got coffee with someone doesn't mean they'll vouch for you or they'll trust you. But in the world, there are hundreds of mechanisms that need trust to come out in order for you to get something. An example that might be relevant for some of you is, in the student loan realm or getting a loan, you might need a guarantor, right? Like, you need someone that trusts you, that you're going to be responsible with that loan. In business, there's so much back channeling that happens. And if you've no one that to vouch for you, then you've no one that will trust you, and you will stay surface area for the rest of your life. So this is actually a very hard lesson that's taken me too long to learn, is building relationships in the business, in your career, is really important, not just so you get the next job or this or that, but so you have people that can vouch for you when you need it. It's when someone asks, hey, what do you think of that Matt guy? They can say, oh, he's great. I worked with him at this and he did this and he's amazing. That goes so far. And I haven't done that because I've been hustling my face off trying to do startups, being a founder specifically. And as Brent alluded to, as I'll be the first to admit, as I'm admitting now, being a founder may not be like being a founder might not be the path. And like, that's okay. I'm kind of sniffing out what the right path is for me. I just think that knowing that whatever career you go into, having a trust circle of people that trust you, that can vouch for you, that'll pick up the phone. These can be friends, these can be colleagues, it can be someone in the middle. But without these, you're going to be kind of high and dry in this realm of serious relationships in life. And I've neglected this point for a while. I've been getting customers, been getting investors, lots of surface area relationships, and it only goes so far. Deep relationships really matter. To give yourself an edge, build a trust circle. Build a circle of people that trust you, you trust them, and you can vouch for each other. So that's the third point. I only got two more. So I don't know if there's ever Q&A, but if there is, we can do that. If not, that's fine. And then Brent, if I should go longer, DM me if for timing, if I should be doing something differently. Cool. And then, so far we have no risk, no reward. That's the number one lesson. You need to take risk in life if you want reward, and the reward you get is proportional to the amount of risk that you are willing to take. And I do want to admit, I'm in a very privileged position in my life where I can take risks. Many aren't. Unfortunately, and it's unfortunate. So that's why you need to look at your risk tolerance. What kind of risk can you take, and take that, whatever that looks like. Everyone is in a different place in life. Some people were born into massive wealth. Some people were born with nothing. We're all in a different place. So we have to work where we're at. Second is try many things, double down on what works. Don't be afraid to stop a path, like I might be doing with my founding career, to start a new one, like I'm doing with my venture capital career. And three, build a trust circle. You need people to vouch for you. You got to vouch for people. The fourth point is I wrote a post. I write a lot. I've written over 100 posts, maybe more. But I've written a lot of posts over the last few years, 5 years, 6 years. And one of them that I think is one of the best ones is called assets over ambition. And what the lesson here is, build assets for your life. I think a lot of younger people, and this is the case for older people too, but I think the younger people get this bad, is that young people are so ambitious. They want to change the world. They want to do this and they want to do that. And they want to just build $1 billion company, and they want to do huge things. They want to work at Harvard, all these things. But sometimes that's kind of it. Sometimes all there is ambition, and there's not much to back the ambition. So what I've learned is you need to build assets, whatever that looks like, to prove that you have ambition, and that you can use those assets to get things in life. For example, my assets are my podcast. I've interviewed 550 founders, many of which are now, I know a lot of people now because of that. That's an asset. One of my assets is my newsletter. One of my assets is my Twitter following. I'm fairly big on Twitter. And it's one of these things where if I say I want to do X, someone says, prove it, or how are you going to do that? I can say, yeah, well, I've written about it here, and I did an interview here, and I can send them links instead of saying, no, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I'm just gonna make it happen. It doesn't work. This was me. This was me 5 years ago. Like, I'm just like Brent's laughing, like with Schmooze, like my first company ever. Like, it wasn't even a company. I don't even talk about it. But with Schmooze, I'm like, we're going to change networking forever. And like, it's just like nothing, no assets. So instead, if you're ambitious, that's great. But build your assets to prove your ambition, to realize your ambition, or else you're just going to be ambitious forever. But just the ambition, and the ambition is good, but you want to do something with the ambition. And what you should be doing is building assets. An example of asset is a podcast. It's a book. It's a newsletter. It's a startup. It's a project. It's a robot. It's anything that you can send someone. Assets are just anything you can send. So that's the fourth point. Is build assets to complement your ambition. And the last point I will share that I've learned is to trust your gut. This is something where no one will, what I'm about to say is a very unique viewpoint. And I think others might share it intrinsically, but this is kind of where I've developed on my worldview of gut. I think gut is what is objectively correct, what is objectively right. I think what your inner voice says is your voice when you were a baby, when you're pure and you don't know the world's bad. And it's not bad, but you know what I mean. Like, it's like you don't know the world is messed up and things like that. And when you're a kid, you're just pure. And what happens is over time, the world hits you, many times, very hard. And you might come across a situation where something in the real world doesn't align with a feeling that you have of how something should actually work. And this is what I call gut. When something in the world, when the world is turned in a way where there's a situation where I'm like, that doesn't feel right. It's my 3-year-old self saying, no, like this it shouldn't be like this. And I think that this has taken me a long way. In business, a lot of people seek status. A lot of people just try to do external things. They play short-term games with short-term people. And they don't really follow, they don't really have a good moral code, at least in my view. And the only way to navigate this world is to trust your gut. A few examples of trusting gut for my story or for my experience. I'm not going to go into too detail here because it's not great part of my life. But there's a point when I was working on Publoft, the one that Jason invested in, that I felt like it was the right time to shut it down. We had money. We still had some money. We still had, Jeremy, my co-founder, had energy. We could have kept going. But I looked at, it was just one of these things where I looked at everything. I looked at everything, objectively. And I just thought, I don't think we should keep pushing on this for various reasons. And he decided to keep going on it. And technically the company, Brett doesn't even know this, like the company's actually still alive. No comment. But I decided to bow out at that point. And it's externally unpopular. And I'll give you another example of this too in the same category. They're like, oh, you failed. Oh, you lost Jason $100,000. Oh, this, oh, that, oh, this. But at the end of the day, if you follow your gut the whole way through, it's all going to line up. It's all going to make sense at the end of the day. And one thing that I talk to my fiance about a lot, and, I'll go back to this path that I've talked about, and I'll finish it up with where I'm at now and what life looks like for me, and what I've done for myself in 5 years, which will be apparent, I think, to many, in the next 5, is if you try to give yourself an edge in life, you will look weird. You will look different. You will be criticized. You will be misunderstood. And the reason for this is because I think, I'm not even going to give reasons. It's just that because that's just how it works. But the benefit, but the only thing that keeps you going is knowing in your gut that you're on the right path. And knowing that you just betting on yourself and just continually to go. So to finalize, to finish this whole thing off, 5 years ago, I was a student at ASU, no business experience, no connections to San Francisco, no family business connections. And 5 years later, I'm working with Eric Ries, who's building a stock exchange and is the author of a long-term stock exchange, or author of Lean Startup. I spend every day emailing VCs in Silicon Valley, like the creme de la creme, every day. I spend every day working with world-class founders. that are going to be building really big companies. I spend every day interviewing I spend every month maybe interviewing hundreds of founders that are building, the next billion-dollar companies. And I get paid. I figured out a way to get paid for the last 5 years, one way or another. And although it looks wonky from the outside, I would not have the path that I chose any other way. And I think that based on the 5 lessons that I just shared, my 5 learnings, things are looking good, because I gave myself a competitive edge early. So that's my spiel. There you go. I hope you enjoyed. I'm happy to do questions if that's a thing. If not, that's fine.
Wow. Thank you so much, Matt. Absolutely. I'm sure this audience we have has plenty of questions teed up for you. I was getting a lot of direct messages on chat saying, wow, really impressive points, and people chiming in about the accuracy of your authentic words of wisdom here today. So Matt, thanks so much. Really appreciate you. We're going to end the recording and then we'll open it up if you have some time to stick around with the group here today.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm looking forward to the questions. And thanks for having me. This was super fun.
All right, Matt. Thank you. Appreciate it.